About positive parenting in the Christian home. My name is Pastor Cherise Gardener, and my main qualification for being here is that I'm a parent. And part of parenting is learning, and you learn through mistakes. And so I'm here to talk to you because I've made a lot of them. And some of them worked and some of them didn't. And I'm hoping to share with you some of the ways that I have learned through the years, and I'm continuing to learn, to bring a positive environment of discipline and structure into our homes. So let's begin this session with prayer. In order to have positive discipline in the home, there really has to be a home that has Jesus in it. So let us invoke the Lord's blessing and presence right now. Loving Heavenly Father, thank you, God, for your amazing love. Thank you, Lord, for the gift of family and for the structure of family. Lord, we pray right now that as we talk about discipline in the home, that you will give to us wisdom from on high. Parenting is not an easy task, Lord, and yet it is one that you've entrusted to all of us as parents and leaders in the home. And so I pray, Lord, as we take on the mantle of raising our young children and trying to instill in them a love for you, Lord, a love for the church, a love for others, within positive boundaries, we pray that we'll be able to provide encouragement for each other and that we'll be able to learn a little bit more about what it means to be a parent, a godly parent, Lord. So be with us today. We ask in the name of Jesus, amen. So when we talk about positive parenting in the home, I just want to first set the guidelines, because a home, when I talk about a home, I'm talking about families. And more specifically, when I'm talking about families, I'm talking about any family that is existing together in a home. And so my family consists of my husband and myself and my daughter, who is actually my niece that we have taken legal guardianship and are raising. And so I'm not talking, and your family might be you, and it might be your husband, or it might be you, and it might be your parents, or it might be you and nieces and nephews or extended family. Whatever family structure that you have that you're living in, that is your family. And the thing is, there is no such thing as a perfect family. From the minute sin came into the world in the Garden of Eden, that was it for the perfect family idea. And yet a lot of us in the church, we kind of feel sometimes, I think, that we still have to have the perfect family, and the kids need to always walk modestly and never chew gum and whistle at the same time, and, listen to you every time you snap your fingers, and, that never happens anymore. And so don't worry about trying to always have the perfect family. The idea is not to have a perfect family. The idea is to have a well-functioning family. And every one of us, regardless of what our family looks like, should strive to have a well-functioning family. And so let me talk to you about what a functioning family looks like. You're never going to have a perfect family. But if your family is functioning well, that generally you want to see some things in it. You want to see that there's love and there's support and there's care for all of the family members within your home. You want to see that there's a sense of security. If your children, if the people who are under your roof, whether they're in-laws or aunts or nephews or nieces or whoever it is that's in your family, if they have a sense of security there, if they enjoy going home, if there's a sense of belonging, then you're probably functioning well. If you have open communication, this is a sign of a healthy family. Not a perfect family, but at least a healthy, well-functioning one. And a family that is also well-functioning is one where every person in the family feels valued. This being said, that does not mean that arguments are not going to take place in the home. Believe it or not, you can have a perfectly functioning family that is healthy, that argues. Did you catch me? Because sometimes I think we try to avoid all conflict in the home. And in my opinion, that is just as unhealthy as having an environment that is toxic all the time. Why? Because whether you realize it or not, arguments just mean this: change is happening in your family. When you are arguing, it means that there's a difference of opinion. It means that somebody is growing beyond what they were used to. And so families that argue is a sign that things are changing within your household. Now, the thing to do is trying to rein that in such a way that you can take this change, this difference of opinion, and try to manage it so it doesn't get toxic, so it doesn't get ugly. And, you know, I've heard couples, I've heard parents who say, you know, well, we try never to argue, but my children still feel stressed. You want to know why? Because when you don't verbalize what's going on in your family, it is still being shown through tension in the home, through tense atmosphere in the home, and your children will feel it. So the best thing you can do is talk to each other and communicate. You are not, as a family, going to get by without arguing. And if you are, what it means is that you are not really dealing with the issues. It means that there's probably one or two people who are putting and asserting their will in your home, and others don't maybe not feel as if they can relay what they're really going through. Or you're just trying to keep it hidden because you don't want to fight. And yet, if things are not going well, if the mindset that you had is developing and changing and moving outward, you have to talk about it with the ones that you love most. Because remember, a well-functioning family is a family that communicates. And so the one thing that you want to do is to remember to try and talk about your arguments, try and talk about the conflict in a way that you are going to help each other to grow and to come alongside of each other in your thoughts. Your arguments are not to see who wins. It's not to see whose opinion is gonna be taken over somebody else's. It's so that you can come to an understanding of where you are. And so my husband and I, Hugh, raise your hand. He's a Jamaican, kind of like Lewiston's background, and they are opinionated people. And I'm a Bahamian, and we are opinionated people. And sometimes we have conflicts within our home because we have differences of opinion. And my daughter is in the home, and so what do we have to do? We have to manage our differences in such a way that we can model to our daughter that it's okay not to agree on everything, but some things are not okay in our home. It's never okay in our home, whether we are arguing or in conflicted opinions, to raise our voices at each other, okay? You can have a disagreement, and that's what an argument is, disagreements. You can have disagreements without raising your voices. You can have disagreements without disrespecting each other. You can have disagreements without calling each other names or implying things about each other. And so when we, in our household, come to the point where we're not agreeing on ideas, we're kind of bucking heads, we are conflicting, we don't always take it into the bedroom. Sometimes we do, because there's things that children should not have to hear. But sometimes, every once in a while, if it's about what we're going to do tonight or how we're going to feel about something that's running in our home, sometimes we do air it out in front of our daughter. Why? So that she sees, oh, this is what people do when they argue. They don't scream, they don't call each other nasty names, they don't raise each other's voices, but they express their opinions, and then at the end, hopefully, there's an understanding that can be reached. And the reason I'm saying this, even though we're talking about discipline, is that you cannot be an effective disciplinarian. You cannot be an effective parent in your home if you're not managing your own conflict as parents. Effective and positive discipline starts with parents who themselves are disciplined, who themselves know how to handle conflict within your own family. Because if you can't handle conflict between you and your spouse or the other members who are in your household, how are you going to relate to your child what discipline looks like? Okay? So that having been said, I want to go to moving around. I had a PowerPoint here, but it didn't quite work out, and so I'm a little trying to get it together. Pardon me for just a moment. So I'm not even following my own PowerPoint. Here we are, guidelines for healthy conflict resolution. So in your home, when conflicts do happen, because they will happen, several things you want to keep in mind. Number one, pick your battles. There's not everything, husbands and wives, that you have to fight about. There are some things that if it's not going to impact your relationship directly, if you yourself are not going to be emotionally scarred for it, maybe you can let it go. You know, every once in a while I have to go into the bathroom and I'll see that the toilet paper isn't put on right because I'm a toilet paper on the front kind of girl and he's a just put it on kind of guy. And I want to say something about it, you know. I want to be able to go in the bathroom at one point and see that the toothpaste cap is actually put back on, you know. And some days I say that, but some days I wake up and I realize he's not in the mood to hear that today, even though I'm in the mood to talk about that right now. And so I have to let it go. Pick your battles carefully when you're in your home. Be open also about what you're feeling. And remember to kind of differentiate what you're feeling and what is happening from your spouse, okay? Because your spouse doing a certain thing is not who your spouse is. It's just what they're doing at the time. And then set boundaries for your arguments. There are some places that I like to tell, especially new couples who are new to parenting or new to together, try not to fight in the bedroom. Because that is the place where you want positive energy. You don't want to walk into a place and every time you walk into it, you're reminded of the last place that you were in an argument. And so try to keep things as much as possible out of the bedroom, maybe into a neutral zone. Maybe you can have other boundaries. And these are boundaries that you have to decide as a family. You know, when we have an argument, we're always going to keep it at the living room table. We're not going to argue for more than 15 minutes on any one subject. Maybe we can come to a point where we say, you know what, let's break for now. You think about it and I think about it, and we'll come back at a separate time. Another boundary would be that never fight if you really are angry, so angry that you can't communicate well. Because people have different styles of communication. My husband gets angry and he gets loud. I get angry and I just remove myself emotionally. I'm just like a blank. I tune out, I turn off, and I disappear inside of myself. And so if we're in a head-to-head conflict, we're not going to get anywhere because he's going to be raising his voice, and I'm just going to be like, I'm here, but I'm not hearing you. I don't really care what you're saying. And so one of our boundaries is we're going to wait a little bit. When tempers have kind of gone down and emotions are okay, then we can begin to talk in a healthy manner. And last two things are, one, look at the root causes of what might be causing your conflict. You might be in conflict every day at a certain time when you get home from work because neither of you has had lunch because you're used to skipping it. Maybe all it is you just need food in your stomach. And when you realize that, you know that every time we walk in the door, we have an argument. Oh, why? Because we're hungry. So maybe the one thing you could do for each other is have a snack bowl. You know that commercial where, you know, there's some person who's being a diva and they turn into a famous star and they say you need a Snickers. Sometimes, believe it or not, that's all it is in your own household. You argue because, you know, first thing in the morning and somebody wakes up chipper and somebody just is not a morning person. That might be when you have your argument because you're just not on the same page. So look for root causes of recurrent conflicts. And lastly, understand that alliances happen every time that you have a conflict in your home. Every time you fight, the people in your household, whether you realize it or not, are going to take sides. In my household, it's usually the girls against the boy. And so anytime something happened, my daughter will come up to me and she'll pat me on the shoulder and she'll give him a look. And I'll have to say to her, because I don't want her to think it's girls against boys, even if it may be, I have to say, it's okay, Bubs, we're just not on the same page right now. You can go give Daddy a pat too, and then she will. But remember that whether we realize or not, we will have alliances, and so watch how you have conflict in your home because you are it is kind of a side. Sometimes you don't even want it to be. You're not thinking about it, but that's what happens. So having said that, the best thing that you can do in your home is to practice saying sorry. It's so easy. You realize that sorry doesn't diminish you at all by saying it. but it gives so much growth to your relationships. It gives so much more to your relationships. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything else. If he's had a bad day and we had a phone call in the car, and I'm just like, oh boy, when I see him, and I get home and he just looks at me and says, I'm sorry. That's it, I'm done. It's okay. And it's over, just like that, with 2 words, I'm sorry. So practice saying you're sorry. And sorry is not just about saying the words. Sorry means say it and then own it. Don't make excuses for it. Just say you're sorry. Because sometimes the worst thing you can do is say you're sorry and then make excuses about why you had to do what you had to do. That just blows it right there, you know? You might as well not have just said it. Say you're sorry, own it, don't make excuses, and then make an effort to repair whatever might be broken. Restore, do something to restore it, and then try and in your heart yearn for change. Okay, so that being said, what do we do about discipline? Now we get to the crux of the matter. Discipline in the home. First of all, what is discipline? Anyone? What is discipline for you? Training for proper behavior. Sounds pretty textbook to me. All right, anyone else? Discipline. Yeah. It's a decision. Yeah, something that you commit to. All right, anyone else? I'm not looking for a right or wrong answer. I'm looking for feedback, because this only really works when it's not just me talking. So, anyone else in what discipline is for you? A lot. All right. All right, I said there was no right or wrong answer, so I'm going to take that, okay? I believe you. No, I believe you. All right. That is my husband, by the way, yes. Discipline actually is all of those things, because discipline is what it is for you. But did you know that discipline comes from the Latin word to teach? Discipline is basically teaching. It's what you said. It is training your child in such a way that they are learning what is acceptable behavior from what is not acceptable behavior. And I don't know about you, but there are every once in a while where I look at my daughter and I wish that I had a remote control switch and I can just switch her off so that she doesn't go into that tantrum stage or that whining stage or that crying stage. Oh, yeah, because those are switches for me. You know, I was reading a parenting magazine, and it was saying, there was a little excerpt in there, was a little cartoon about a little boy who had a pesky sister, and she was bothering him, and he looked at her and he said, I wish you were one of my toys that had batteries so I could just take them out, you know? And I think we probably all feel like that about our kids at some point, especially when coming around 8 o'clock at night when things start to wind down. But the fact of the matter is, you know, we don't have remote control switches, and there are no batteries, and sometimes I don't even care about that. I just wish there was a pause button. Just that button I can just push when things are getting out of hand, and I can take 2 deep breaths and be like, before I blow my top. But barring all of that, which we don't have, we have to try and really within ourselves decide beforehand, what are we going to do in situations where our children are not behaving in a way that we think is a Christian role model, if they're not traveling on that path. And the thing is, you have to do this while you are not angry. All right? Do not try to think about discipline techniques when you are angry, because, you know, things like wringing her neck or, you know, sending her up into the room for her rest of her life, those things come up maybe in my mind, I don't know. But doing it now is when you need to start thinking about discipline, and you need to think about measures and procedures and consequences that you're going to put in place before the actual disciplining happens. And there are many different studies on this to say that positive discipline always happens more effectively if it has thought in it beforehand. if you've already talked with your children about what the rules are, if you've already clearly stated, and maybe it actually helped have their input in what some of the consequences will be. If they know that there's going to be, there's going to be consequences, and that you're always doing it at the same time, that there's a predictability, and they know there's going to be follow through. If all these things are in place, positive discipline can happen much more effectively. And there are different types of tools that we use for discipline. Now, discipline, remember, is teaching a child what is acceptable behavior from what is not. And in order to teach children what is acceptable from what is not, there's two different things that you can use. You can use reward or positive consequences, and you can use negative consequences, okay? So there's positive consequences and there's negative consequences. Anyone here, what are some of the positive consequences you use? This means that if you have rules, your child has adhered to the rules, or they maybe haven't and you told them and now they are. What are some of the positive consequences for obeying rules that you have in your own household? Verbal praise, yes. And verbal praise is part of what we call social rewards. Social rewards are huge. All right? Anyone else? Verbal praise. What else do you do in your home? Well, my husband, he's a hugger. So anytime Caitlin does anything right, he's just, oh, I love you, and he just hugs her. That's her. I'm not quite as effusive, so, I'll give her a lot more verbal praise, and I'll say, that is so amazing. I'm so proud of you. So anything else? Because there's a lot of different types of rewards, positive rewards that you can give to kind of just make sure that kids are getting it. Because we tend to think as parents that when you have the rules, you either obey the rules and you get the negative consequences, or you obey the rules. But we forget, if you're going to give negative consequences, you should also give positive consequences when they do it, so that it reinstills in them the understanding that what they're doing is right. And so you can give them social rewards, and social rewards are things like praise. Hey, that was so awesome. And you can even be specific with your praise. I was so happy that you waited patiently while I was on the phone. I was so happy that you went to your room and actually cleaned it when I told you the first time. That was pretty awesome. I'm so proud of you right now. That is praise. And then there is affection. You can give affection as a social reward for actual rules in your house, remember. And that the affection can be hugging them, it could be high-fiving them, it could be kissing them, it could be patting them on the back. Then there's also attention. Sometimes what my daughter enjoys most as a social reward, it is not praise, and believe it or not, it's not affection, it's attention. And so what she wants for us is, hey, Mom, if I clean my room right now, can we sit down and can you play chess with me? Because that's her new thing, chess. Can you play chess with me? Or can you watch this movie with me? Or can you read a book with me? Affection can be a social reward that you give your kids for doing and following the rules. There's also activities that you can do. We're going to go to the park if you get all your chores done. If for the next week I don't have to tell you about washing dishes or doing the laundry or whatever it is, dusting in the house, then we're going to go out and we're going to do bowling one night. I mean, there are a lot of social rewards that you can do to instill the rules that you have in your household. Discipline is not just about negative consequences. That's what I want you to understand. It is also, and kids learn much more quickly with social rewards, with praise, with affection, with attention, with activities than they do with negative consequences. But negative consequences do sometimes have to come up. So what are some of those that you practice? Anyone? What are some of the negative? Yeah. All right. Me too. Well, she doesn't really need it. She's 9 now, so we haven't done that in a while, but especially when she was younger. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes. What is that? That's all right. Most of us probably do, so it's okay. Yep. That's right. That's right. Those are actually really good and useful negative consequences. Spanking is one that it's not something that a lot of parents like to do anymore. In our culture in the Caribbean, it was pretty prevalent, and we did practice it when she was younger, and we kind of weaned off of it as she got older because of her own personality. We didn't need to, but that's one of them to consider within reason. But there are a lot of other negative consequences that you can use, and timeout is one of them. Taking away things that they enjoy, taking away privilege is one of them. You can also think about logical consequences. Say you're at a dinner table and your child is one of those picky eaters like mine is, and they need to understand that at the table you're going to eat what is served. And if you don't eat what is served, the logical consequence is you're just going to be hungry until the next meal. You don't get to say, I'm not hungry, and then 15 minutes later ask for a snack. We've learned that the hard way. And so our rules are pretty firm. If it's not eaten at the table, it means you weren't hungry. If you weren't hungry, you have to choose not to be hungry for the next 2 hours or so until the next meal. So you be careful saying how you don't like it just because carrots are not your thing, you know, or the rice may have peas in it and you don't like it. Those are logical consequences, okay? Natural consequences to things. If we tell you to put down your book in time for, put down your iPad, turn off the TV and do what you need, and you don't listen, then logically what I'm going to do is say, you don't get to read. Well, that's never been a problem in my house, okay? I'll just be honest. All right? But maybe for some parents that is. I would love to be able to say, yeah, no, she's not a big reader. But iPad, computer, whatever it is, toys, you don't get that for a certain period of time. So you can explain to your children, the important thing about rules and discipline is this. Number one, start with regulating your own emotions when you talk about disciplining, giving the consequences. You may be angry, but you don't have to be angry. Do you know what I'm saying? Children need to understand that the reason there are consequences is that so that they can learn and so that they can grow. But sometimes we as parents, we want to give consequences because we want to punish them. But punishment is not discipline. They're not synonymous. Discipline is to teach a child. Punishment is something else. Punishment is so that you can feel, whew, I feel better about myself because I did what needed to be done. Punishment is about you and what makes you feel better. Discipline is about the child and what makes them grow. So remember, when you're giving your discipline, whatever it is, whether it's positive, especially negative, make sure that you're in control of your own emotions. The second thing is to try and connect with your children when you're giving consequences. Because when your child does something wrong, believe it or not, they're not doing it just to push your buttons. Although sometimes I feel that way. They're actually doing it because they feel disconnected in some way anyway. They're misbehaving because they're feeling they're not heard, or they feel disconnected from you in some way. And so when you're giving your consequences, if at all possible, try to connect with your child in some way. Meaning, stoop down to their level, look them in the eye, let them know that they are valuable, that they're people, that you see them. Or just touch them, not in anger, not one of those touches, as we know we've all done that maybe once or twice, but on the shoulder. Give them a hug. Have them sit next to you so your bodies are touching. Connect with them in some way to let them know that you are hearing them and you see them, and yet you still have to be firm with them. And so one, regulate your own emotions, and then connect with them in some way. And it's always really helpful in the home. When you're disciplining your children, to have rules that are set out clearly, as I said beforehand. If you have house rules, everybody in the house should know what the house rules are. A house rule should not be, you did some nameless thing that we've never talked about, but that irritated me at this moment, so I'm going to try and discipline you. That's not really discipline. That's just you venting. I just want you to understand that. If a child does not know that it's against the rules for that child, it's probably not against the rules. Okay? So talk and be clear about what you expect in your home with your children. And this is an ongoing thing because it's going to change with your children. Some things that you may have allowed when they were 2 and 3 because it was cute, all of a sudden they get to 8 or 9 and it's not cute anymore, and suddenly you're raising your voice and the child is just like, I don't understand. And so when the rules change for you, make sure that you talk with your children about it. Little ones, you know, hey, it was okay when you're tugging on my hand and I'm talking to somebody else, and when you were 2 or 3 I would listen to you because you're my baby, but now you're old enough to understand that you need to wait until a conversation is finished. Make it clear, because that teaches them that they also have to have self-control, that they need to be patient, that they need to be aware that there's people outside of themselves. So often children are only aware of themselves. That's it. Themselves, their surroundings, and their needs. And so if you're clear about what you want in your household, it's going to be much easier. And then be consistent, both in making sure that when you give a rule, this is what's going to happen, okay? They need to know that there's going to be some predictability in their home. If you say you're going to do it, do it. Otherwise, don't say it. Our daughter, she's got a memory like an elephant about the things that she wants. And so if we say that we're going to do something positive, we had better do it. So I stress this, and everybody who knows me says that. I never promise her anything if I don't know if I can fulfill it. Okay? Mommy, can we go to the movies later on? We'll see. My standard answer. We'll talk about it later. Well, why want to know? Well, I don't know. So I'm not going to say yes and then change my mind and have her feel bad. And the same goes with discipline. If you say you're going to do something, if they're supposed to get a timeout, if you're supposed to take away that TV for a certain amount of time, do it. Because if you don't, then the child thinks, oh, it doesn't matter, because they're not going to do it anyway. All my voice, and it's all over. Mommy, I'm hungry. You could have eaten at the table. 2 hours is not going to kill you. And believe it or not, oh, but the child is hungry, you need to feed it. No, we are not living in one of those countries where kids, right now, in most of our families, 2 hours will not kill them, even if they don't eat all their dinner. Believe it or not, even though the tears are there. Be consistent in your discipline. Be consistent with your rules. Be consistent with your follow-through. And moving right along. All right, let me give you some tips for using discipline. We talked about social rewards. There's a couple things that we don't usually think about as parents that we can use as discipline techniques. The first one is distraction, especially for younger children. I know it seems like a cop-out, but it's for real, okay? If your child is about to go into some little tantrum that you know about and you can see it coming, distract them. So if you know that you have a long wait, especially in a restaurant, right? And after 5 minutes, if that food is not there, your child is going to start getting antsy. Why not just bring some crayons or a puzzle or say, hey, I spy. Anytime I see that Caitlin is about to get restless, and because we're at a lot of church events, as pastors in the family, and Kate gets a little, antsy on the way, we have to do things to distract her too. Well, let's see. We're going to play I Spy. We're going to see the first one who can spot whatever. because I know a meltdown is coming, because Mommy, I'm tired, and Mommy, I'm bored, and Mommy, I'm going to go home, and why do we have to be here? And I don't want to hear it. Distraction. Use it as part of your arsenal. The second one is for a lot of parents, especially with younger children, and it does take a little discipline on your part, believe it or not, ignore certain behaviors. I am not saying ignore your child, especially if they're small, and put them in, just leave them to their own devices. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying ignoring behaviors, not ignoring your child. This is especially true when they're whiny or argumentative or using, loud words or trying to raise their voice to get your attention. Believe it or not, when you respond to them, it says that that's okay. When a child whines to get what they want and you give in, that becomes part of their arsenal. When a child raises their voice or uses those big old crocodile tears that little girls know so well, and you give in, that becomes part of their arsenal. And so what you can do to tell them that that is not acceptable behavior is ignore them. There are so many times when Caitlin is just, and I can see my husband, he's ready to blow. And I said, sweetie, let her be. Ignore her. He's just, I'm like, nope, don't feed it. Don't feed it. I know you want to, just don't feed it. Ignore her. Because when she realizes that we're not responding, then eventually she goes in her room, she kind of gets herself together, and then she comes back. Different child. Mom, can that's when you respond to them. Oh, you've gotten control of your feelings. You're not whining anymore. What would you like to tell me? And that says to your children, oh, she doesn't respond to the whining or the crying. So remember that there's more in your arsenal than just the typical discipline measures that we have. We either resort to spanking for those who do it or timeout for those who don't. But there are so many other things that you can do. One other thing I want to say is give your consequences right away. I know that when I was growing up, sometimes my dad, especially if we're in church or some area, he'd say, wait till you get home, or, ooh, when I catch you later. The thing is, kids have short attention spans, so by the time you get home or later does come, all they're thinking is that you're doing that because you are mean and you are a heartless parent, not because it's a consequence anymore. Then it really is for them just a punishment, because that's forgotten. They've done hours of good behavior between when they had that little infraction and now, because they're always on their best behavior from then on in. And what that says to them is none of that good behavior counted. None of it. Just that one thing. So give your consequences right away. Sometimes it means, believe it or not, taking them out of church into the back area. It's leaning down and say, don't think that because you're here in church, you're not going to get something. Make them understand, if you do something, you will face the consequences. And then follow through. And remember that the same way I said it's okay to say sorry to your family or your spouse, it is also okay to say sorry to your children. Because despite our best efforts, even with planning, pre-planning, prior planning, setting rules, there are going to be one or two instances where you just have had a bad day and they pressed the wrong button. And that was all she wrote. It's okay to look at your child and say, I'm sorry. Mommy or daddy, we said something wrong. We didn't respect you, and we should have respected you. I apologize. And do you know what this says to your children? It says, I see you and I value you. And even though I have to punish you sometimes, you too are a human being. You are a valuable part of the family. So don't be afraid. If you've blown your top and you're just like, you know what? They deserved it because, no, calm down. And then at an appropriate time, tell them I'm sorry. It will do a lot even for your relationship. So questions we need to ask ourselves, questions you should be asking yourself, and maybe you're already asking yourselves about your family and its functioning. ask yourselves, and maybe go home and talk about it within your family. Do you have respect for each other? And I guarantee you, asking yourselves as parents is not the same as asking your children. Little Mary, Caitlin, Joshua, Jimmy, Sam, do you feel that mommy respects you? Do I listen to you? Believe it or not, they'll be pretty honest with you, you know? Do you think I value your opinion? It's amazing. I'm afraid to ask Caitlin something unless I really want to know the answer. Because she's probably at that point now where she is not afraid to say it. And sometimes it's a real eye-opener. And sometimes it's like, you know what, Mom, I don't actually feel that you, she's actually said this to me. Or written it on paper. She's a writer. Mommy, I feel as if you don't really care for me very much because you haven't spent much time with me lately. That's something that kind of jolts you awake as a parent when you get, and I've gotten that on an occasion. And so ask your family, sit down, have a family conference, maybe over a meal, maybe in a neutral place, and just ask questions, probing questions that can get answers. How can I value you more? You might say to your child or ask the question, do I value or do I respect you? And they'll say maybe the automatic yes. But if you have a follow-up question like, how can I value you more? Or how can I show that I respect you more? You would be amazed that some of the answers will tell you that they really didn't feel valued or respected, because there are a lot of them coming, you know? And then listen to them too. Does your family have rules? Maybe talk as a family. Do you feel as if all the rules in the house are clearly stated? And if they don't feel that they're clearly stated, maybe that's a point where you have to say, okay, you know what? Silly thing, it's old school, but let's write them down. Let's pin them on the fridge or wherever it is that you walk in the door. These are our rules. So in case you didn't remember, I can direct you to the fridge. You know that Mickey Mouse magnet? Look under there, and let's see if we've talked about it. Oh, there it is. So make sure that there's clarity within your house into your rooms, and whether there's flexibility. Remember, things change, okay? And so as the rules change, communicate that with your children. And then never forget that a fun home, a home where there is a humor, is a home where there's going to be joy. So I laugh at myself all the time. Hugh laughs at himself all the time. We laugh at Kate too, all the time. But we try to use humor and joy in our home, and we try to keep God in our home. Last but not least, when working with positive discipline, always make sure that your child, in every aspect of discipline, from the setting of the rules to making sure that they're predictable and they know what's going to happen, to the follow through, in every aspect, ensure that your child hears a message of love. Because if what you do and how you implement these rules and consequences